Hello world, my name is Victor Engelmann. Welcome back to the series on professional network design using Linux. Today I want to talk about Radius, which stands for Remote Authentication Dial-in User Service. And this is used, among other things, for Wi-Fi logins, because the idea is, well, normally at home, when you have a Wi-Fi network, then you will just put some so-called pre-shared key on the access point, and then you also put it on your Wi-Fi devices. And yeah, then your Wi-Fi devices will use that pre-shared key to communicate with the access point. And yeah, that's an okay design. You will see that even in relatively large companies. But if you have a really large company, then this can be a security problem. Because imagine someone steals one of your Wi-Fi client devices. Well, then they might be able to extract the pre-shared key and then use that to drive to your company and park in your parking lot, and then maybe be in your range of your Wi-Fi access points, and then use that pre-shared key to log into your network. And then they would have access to your network, and you really don't want that to happen, right? So if that would happen, if a device was stolen, then what you would have to do is you would have to change the pre-shared key. I mean, the pre-shared key should be encrypted on the devices, but still, I wouldn't bet my life on it. And yeah, maybe you have some badly designed device that doesn't encrypt it on the hard drive or whatever. The point is you would have to change this pre-shared key, which means that you have to change it on all your access points, you have to change it on all client devices. Yeah, and that would be a lot of work if you have a really huge company. Okay, and that's what Radius is for. When you have Radius, then you can give different username and password combinations to all your client devices. And yeah, if one of them is stolen, well, you just deactivate the password for that one device. Okay, and then you don't have that problem anymore. And yeah, but on the other hand, you don't want to configure each and every access point to have all these usernames and passwords, right? If you buy one more client device, you don't want to log into each and every access point and add that username and password on that access point. So that's what Radius is for. With Radius, you have one central server, a so-called authentication server. And yeah, whenever you try to log in on a certain access point, the access point doesn't itself decide whether it wants to let you in or not. It talks to that central authentication server. Okay, and yeah, that means that this central server now only needs to have this username and password. So you set that once on the server, and you connect your access points to that server, and then you can log in with the same username and password on all your access points. Okay, I hope that is clear enough. So let's start doing this. I've bought an access point for this, and yeah, let's look into this. Here on my OpenSense firewall, under System Firmware Plugins, I have already installed OS Free Radius. That's easy, you just search for it here in this search box and then click on the install button, the plus here on the right side, and then it will just install. But your OpenSense installation needs to be up to date for that. Okay, then after you've installed that, you get a new entry down here under Services with Free Radius. Okay, and here you have some general settings. Well, maybe I want to enable this service. You can enable VLAN assignment, but with VLAN assignment you can assign a VLAN, unsurprisingly, two separate clients, okay? So if somebody logs in with this username and password, they will be put in VLAN 31, for example. And if they log in with a different username and password, they might be put in VLAN 32, whatever. But the problem is that most access points don't support that. And yeah, my access point doesn't support it. So because of that, I've disabled this here. LDAP, yeah, we haven't talked about LDAP yet. That's actually one of the next videos I want to do. But since we haven't talked about it, I will skip it. Yeah, there's not much to talk about here under general. The important thing is here under clients. Here you create a new client, so a new access point. I will call this TP link AX 1800, and I will give it a password. Okay, and I will limit it to only talk to 10.1.1.5. Okay, so like this, you could also allow this to a whole network range, but so then all your access points could use that same secret. But it's still a better idea to give a different secret to each access point, because then when one of your access points is stolen, then you only disable that one access point and all the other access points are unaffected by it. So because of that, I will set this to 10.1.1.5, which is the IP address that I intend to give to this access point. Okay. I won't run a DHCP server in there because I already have DHCP servers, so that's pointless. Because of that, I don't have DHCP leases either. Here under EAP, this is something that you need to remember. Here you select your extendable authentication protocol. TLS is pretty common, PEAP is also very common. I will just leave it at the default setting of PEAP. And you could even put SSL certificates in here so that you could install your root certificate on your client devices, and then the clients won't even talk to a radio server that doesn't have your server certificate. Yeah, that would be some additional security, but we've recently talked extensively about SSL certificates, so I'm not going to do that here. LDAP, again, we haven't talked about it yet, so I will skip it for now. I just want to point one thing out. LDAP is basically just a database. So if you want to use LDAP, you have to give it an LDAP server and port, username and password, and then down here you can set database queries that will give exactly the legal accounts, that will return the legal accounts from the LDAP server. Yeah. So you could limit this to something like you could have an Active Directory user group, and then you could just put users in that group and design this query such that this one group is found. And yeah, then this exact group would be the usernames and passwords that are allowed to log in. Generally, I don't think it's a good idea to use LDAP as a backend for Radius, because typically in LDAP you store your domain logins, and people can change their own passwords, right? And if somebody changes their password to 12345, yeah, then somebody who parks on your parking lot might be able to log in to your network with that password. Okay. So because of that, I think it's really a better idea to keep your domain password and your Wi-Fi password separate. At best, I would say you could store them in LDAP, but not as the users and passwords of your domain users. I would have separate users with separate usernames and passwords for this. But okay, that's however you want it. Proxy, I don't know. Log files, I will skip that. Okay, so my network is already prepared because I've recorded this video before, and then I realized that I had accidentally not recorded my screen. So what I have here, that's my switch here on the table. Port 5 is what I'm going to connect the access point to, and port 5 is half a trunk port. So I will give the VLANs 30 and 31 to it, because all the other VLANs will not be accessible through that anyways. Okay. Yeah, so I have assigned 30 and 31 to port 5 and also to the other trunking ports 1 and 2. Through port 1 we can get to the other switch, which has VLAN 31 on port 1, 2 and 3, which means that it will accept these packets coming from this switch and redirect them or give them to the firewall. Okay, so if the access point gives packets with VLAN ID 31, the switch will accept it, forward it to the other switch will accept it, forward it to the firewall, and the firewall has an interface in that VLAN with my typical scheme 10.1.31.254. Okay, and for now I also have DNS and DHCP in that VLAN, and also I have just a firewall rule that will allow everything coming from VLAN 31 to access the internet and whatever, just so the firewall doesn't interfere with anything that I'm trying out right now. Okay, so the network is prepared, so the firewall should be, so the packets should go to the firewall should be able to deal with the packets in the way that I want it to. So let's plug the access point in on port 5. Now I have to wait for the access point to boot. Okay, here it is. I will connect to it through 5G. Okay, I'm connected. And now that I'm connected, yeah, I'm still connected. So now I can connect to HTTP TP-Link EAP.net. EAP is a type of network access point here. So this is the login page for that access point. Default username and password are admin and admin. Very security aware TP-Link to open a network without a password and then have a configuration page with a default password. Okay, now I have to set a new password. I have already put it in my clipboard, so I won't use 2.4 gigahertz. Here on the 5 gigahertz I will configure an SSID of engelmann.local and yeah, not my actual Wi-Fi password. Okay, now I already see engelmann.local here, so connect to it, not my actual Wi-Fi password. Okay, I'm connected, that's good, with not my actual Wi-Fi password. Okay, now let's see. The access point has gotten the IP address 10.1.1.56 from the DHCP server. Let's change that on management network to 10.1.1.5. Remember, that's what I configured on the Radius server, that I only allow this IP address to connect to it using that password, not my actual Radius password. Gateway is 10.1.1.254. DNS is also 10.1.1.254. And you see it has forwarded me to 10.1.1.5 now. That's nice. I think I should now be able to connect to it from inside. So if I now connect to my normal Wi-Fi network, yes, I can still access it through 10.1.1.5. Okay. Now, not my actual Radius password, copy that. Now let's set this up. Here under wireless settings, this is a bit annoying. You have to manually click here to look into the 5 gigahertz band. Yeah, whatever. And in here you can now configure multiple SSIDs and have separate VLANs for the different SSIDs. I personally would prefer to have the ability to configure VLANs per user on the Radius server, but yeah, access points that support that are really expensive, and yeah, I don't have that many Wi-Fi devices anyways, so having separate SSIDs for the different VLANs, it's not ideal, but it's good enough. So let's create an additional SSID, which I will call engelmann.local31. I will not broadcast the SSID for security reasons. Now this is important. We have to set this to WPA-Enterprise. If you set this to WPA Personal, you will just get this pre-shared key setting. With WPA-Enterprise. It allows you to use a Radius server. See, if I set WPA Personal, then you just get this wireless password, and that's not what I want. So WPA Enterprise, WPA and WPA2. AES encryption is good, I think. Now the Radius server IP 10.1.1.254. radius port. It tells us here the default is 1812, and I didn't change that on the radius server, so yeah, I have 1812 on the radius server, not my actual radius password, so the password that I have configured here for the clients. I don't think I have clicked apply. Okay, radius accounting, no. Guest network rate limit, no. Just okay. Good. Now I have this SSID. And now I can go here to VLAN and configure this new SSID to use VLAN 31. Okay, so if I log in on that SSID, then my packets go to VLAN 31. They will go to the firewall, and then the firewall can take care of them. Good. Okay, so the access point should now use the radius server. So what we now need to do is we need to configure a user so that we can then log in with that user. Okay, the connection between the access point and the radius server is already done. Now we have to configure the radius server to use a password that we then use on the laptop to connect on that new SSID there. So I will create username, let's say laptop, with password not my actual laptop password. Yeah. I don't think I need to configure the IP address and subnet mask and routes. They should be configured through the DHCP server that the firewall is running in VLAN 31. And again, I cannot set this VLAN ID here because the access point doesn't support that. Good. Save it, apply. And now let's try to connect to that. It's a hidden network, so it doesn't show up in this list here. So I have to go to the network configuration, and in here create a new connection, Wi-Fi. SSID is engelmann.local31. It's a hidden network, that's important to set it here. Security is WPA-Enterprise. Yeah, IPv4 is automatic, that's what I want. Okay, so WPA-Enterprise, the authentication protected EAP, extendable authentication protocol. Remember here on free radius EAP, this is configured to PEAP, so protected EAP. That's what I select here. And yeah, username, laptop, password, not my actual laptop password. Save. And let's try to connect. Connection activated. That is looking good. So let's look into the IP settings. What do we have? 10.1.31.50. So this looks really good. This is my schema for the DHCP server, that in VLAN 31 I get a 10.1.31 IP address, ping 8888, and I can connect to the internet. Okay, so that went pretty well, unsurprisingly, because I just did the same thing before. So just remember, when you run Radius, you configure your clients, you store the IP address of your access points and passwords for the access points. Then on the access points you give this IP address to the access point, and in the wireless settings you configure the Radius server, give it the password so that the access point can talk to the Radius server. And yeah, then after that you can configure users. You could configure more users, and then every other user has their own username and password, and yeah, then you configure that username and password on the different devices and everything is fine. Okay, yeah, that's all I wanted to show you today. If you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe, and see you next time.